Hi, my name is Aranor Bruce, and I hope that you enjoy these videos of how to better write and perform stand-up comedy, taken from audio clips of some of the world's greatest stand-up comedians and people of the industry. I set it to images that I've gimped to make it a little more enjoyable if you are watching the screen, but they were originally audio tracks I listened to further refine and prepare myself for the stage. So enjoy, subscribe, and I'll see you on the stage.
I have my knowledge organized in an idiosyncratic manner. And that's a consequence of having spent, when I wrote my first book, which was Maps of Meaning, I wrote every day for 3 hours for 15 years. And I vowed when I started that I was going to make that, what would you say, the highest duty that I had. Nothing was going to come before that. And there's a certain amount of cruelty in that, because it meant that, if my wife came into my office, then I would bark at her. And if my kids came into my office, like a junkyard dog surrounded by barbed wire. It's like, because you can always not write. It's not that important that day. And there might be more pressing concerns, and they're probably, including people who would just like to have something to do with you for a while, or do something nice, or have a problem fixed. It's like, no, go away. I've got 3 hours. And so I was a thief, and I took that from my life. And so I spent a very long time writing and thinking about the hardest problem that I could conceptualize, and that was the relationship between the individual and the atrocity committed in the service of totalitarian possession. It was the worst problem I could think of. How? So I looked to see what the worst thing people could do under the worst circumstances was, and tried to figure out why that happened. That was step one. And step two was, having come to some determination about how it might happen, and having learned something that I had suspected all along, which was that capacity was part of the individual, right? Me, as well as everyone else, to determine if there was a mode of acting in the world that would restrict that possibility so that it would no longer manifest itself. And so I spent however many hours, 45,000 hours thinking about that. And that's not right, because that's how much time I spent writing about it. Most of that time, because I have a very obsessive mind in some sense. If I lock on a problem, I can't let it go, or it can't let me go. I don't know which way to think about it. And so it wasn't only that I was writing for 3 hours a day. I was thinking about it all the time, right from the time I woke up till the time I went to sleep. And I was reading about it obsessively. I read a tremendous amount when I was in graduate school. And so the reason I'm telling you all of that is to answer this question. Is like, then I spent 30 years lecturing about it. And, I started out with my lectures fairly structured because I was still wrestling with the ideas, but I tried over the years to reduce the amount of scaffolding, safety wire, netting that was underneath me while I was lecturing, until I got to the point where I didn't need to do anything other than sit for 10 minutes and think, okay, what's the problem? Where am I going? I'm exploring a solution. I'm not necessarily putting forward a pre-constructed solution. Like, it'll be in the universe of solutions I've considered, but I'd like to get it sharper and clearer. So I got to the point where I could go from the problem through the story, using all these things that I had already talked about and knew, and so then I can sequence them. And I think the closest analogy I can think of is jazz improvisation. It's something like that. An expert musician has a tremendous number of habits deeply ingrained, like an athlete, same thing, that are part and parcel, built into him or her. And so I have that, and so then I can come out and think, okay, well, a little of this and a little of that, and that's new. It's like Each of these ideas is a personality of sorts, and you can let them have a dialogue in real time and see where it goes. And that's a story, right? That's what a great author does when he writes a book, is he puts out some characters and then he lets the characters do whatever they would do, and that reveals the story. And so I kind of do that. I let the ideas do what they're going to do and see how they fight and compete with one another.
In a 1978 interview, you said, quote, "After a while I came to realize that I really am a writer who can perform his own work." Do you still see yourself in that same way?
Oh, yeah. The greatest joy to me is in finding and forming the ideas into material. The performing is very gratifying. And it's the end of the process. And it's wonderful that I get out there and I don't have someone else distorting what I write or editing my words. But the joy, the glee that comes from finding something and saying, "Oh, isn't that fabulous? What a great thing. No one else seems to have noticed that." And then to say it your way. You know.
The interesting psyche about that, and having talked with Neil Simon and talking about this kind of thing many, many times, he had absolutely, his thrill is to stand in the back and watch the actors say his words and agonize because a line didn't work and not wait to be able to go back to be able to change it, but never having the need to get up and do it himself.
My need to get up there, as you know from the earlier talk we had, preceded everything. My need to get up and show off and be applauded for it. This great discovery I made later was when my acting ideas were stalled there in that 67, 68, 69 period, when I started to do a few things, That Girl and a movie with Doris Day, I found I didn't slide right into acting automatically. It wasn't automatic. I was afraid of it. I didn't like it. I had no confidence there, and it scared me, and I pulled back from it. And that's what forced me to continue as a comedian, and that's what allowed for me to discover this ability that I have to turn out what's now 14 albums and 7.5 hours of HBO show, that I could actually produce that stuff and then it gets better. That's what I had no idea about when I was a young man.
I always like to write. That's one of my favorite things, is doing new stuff. I was just talking to the guy I was working with this last weekend because I was going to be doing some new stuff in my show, and I said, that's my favorite moment, coming up to a bit that's like, it's like running on virgin snow. You know, you're making new footprints, and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if they're going to laugh. If they do laugh, you don't know where they're going to laugh. You're just starting a brand new baby joke, you know, and you're gonna. It might get nothing, and there might be nothing to it at all. But if there's something there, then you get to do it night after night and play with it, massage it, and get it better and tighter. And I love the process.
Do you have a test audience, friends, or anyone that you run your jokes by?
No, always the regular audience.
Always live on stage.
Yeah.
Okay.
The nice thing about writing from your own ideas, I guess from any ideas, but from your own ideas, from your nuggets, is that in trying to edit them and fix them so they work, new thoughts occur. They grow like the neural networks in the brain do. They find connections that you didn't think of originally, and suddenly a sentence or two is a paragraph. And the paragraph might sit, and as you go and you're way afield somewhere in your files and you find another paragraph, that you think, wait a minute, what was that other thing? And zoom, back to that. And that's what's great about this process. And that's what's great about the brain.
Just keep these things in mind if you want to be able to develop stand-up comedy material quickly that gets the big laughs. It's not just one thing that gives a comedian their ability to generate laughs. If you want to progress quickly as a comedian, you need to know how to recognize and incorporate the comedy mechanics that you already use to get laughs off stage into your stand-up comedy material, because, as I mentioned earlier, it will be these same comedy mechanics that will also get you the laughs that you want when you're delivering your stand-up comedy material on stage. There's nothing difficult about developing and delivering stand-up comedy material that actually works for you if you know what you're doing. understanding comedy mechanics is just one small aspect of being able to produce a stand-up comedy act that kills audiences.
It's a healing art, comedy. It has power to transform people, even in the short term and in the long term. I believe that. Guys that could just stand up there and there was very little intellectual content in any of that. It was a limited kind of a vocabulary. But it was
mother-in-law jokes or stuff, whatever.
But funny as hell because the perspective was there. And the surprise, comedy always leads you down one direction and then grabs you and pulls you in the other direction. So how you achieve that? Oh, a million different ways. Now I combine a lot of things. I'm very fortunate, and I consider myself lucky that I can use my body in my work. I can use my voice. I get to write these ideas. I can look for delicate things that are a little like lace, and then I can look for something like a couple of ash cans to throw at a wall, because that gets my effect too.
So the vocabulary
is not a necessity, obviously.
Not a necessity.
No.
It helps, or it has been a mainstay for George Carlin.
It helps when you're doing delicate things. When you're doing something that has a fragile framework to it, it helps to be able to get very nice and precise with your language, because then again, you're leading them somewhere, and then boom, you pull the rug out.
I see where they're laughing, and then after I get a good idea or a good feel of where they're laughing, then I'll cut out all the unnecessary parts. Once you're relaxed with the joke, you can actually fuck with it more. You know what I'm saying? You can say more things, or you could not say things. You can actually write on stage because you're so comfortable because you know they're gonna laugh. But it's a process.
I'm supposed to be doing another hour stand-up special. It just got punted because of this thing coming out.
Yeah.
We were gonna do it this coming year, but they want it to be the following year now.
Yeah.
So
that's great. And so, do you have that material already written?
I'm in the process right now of turning over from the last one and replacing it with new stuff.
How do you?
I love that process.
I love writing more than anything.
Yeah,
it's my favorite thing to do when you just all day long, you're just brain's wide open. I hate the whittling down of going because I don't really know what a good bit is. I told Greg Fitzsimmons, I said, I wish you could just come in and watch my hour and go, and that's not a good bit. And then this one's really good. I'd focus on this and get rid of this shit. That's a little hacky. And then he told me, he goes, no, that's how we decide if you're a good comic or not, is which bits you decide to tell us. I went, right. Oh, yeah. I guess it is my job.
I sit down at a table. So what should I do?
How do you come about writing a joke now? Like where you are right now?
I don't, what's weird is I don't know how that works. I don't know how ideas for jokes happen. I don't try to do it anymore. I can't, some people say, well, you sit down on a blank piece of paper at a computer and you just write. I've tried that. Nothing comes out of me.
Yeah.
That don't work for me at all. I just go through my day the way I would normally go through a day, and every once in a while something jumps up and down. You'll see something, you'll hear something, you'll experience something, and you go, hey, that's kind of goofy or weird, or there might be something there. And then once I have the idea, then I will put words around it, and go, all right, here's a beginning, middle, and an end. And I'll try it on stage, but I tape every show. And I find, for me, a lot of the best writing takes place on stage.
For me, too. I feel like sometimes I feel like you put yourself in a pressure situation to write. It's like you corner yourself into funny.
Yes. I think with a piece of paper and a pen or at a keyboard, at least for me, I tend to get too cutesy and clever.
Yeah.
A lot of, oh, look at all this clever stuff coming out of me.
Yeah.
But clever does not always equal funny, and so you find yourself writing more than is necessary for the bit to work. And when you're on stage, there's something in the back of your brain, that heat of the moment forces you to cut to the quick. It's like, quit saying all that crap you wrote and say this now.
Yeah.
And you get right at the meat, right at the funny, and you go, okay, that was it. Yeah. And then I'm glad that I taped and I can go listen to it,
My problem is that I do that, and then sometimes on stage I'll get to the thing and I'll do the line that just is the Band-Aid to get to the next, where the first funniest thing I think of, and then my job when I get ready for an hour is to go through of all the lazy writing I've done and then do good writing. Like I like to. It's almost like I write the song, but I kind of hum parts of it, and then does that make sense? Like it's always dirty for me. Like I had a joke about me jumping out of a plane with Rachel Ray, and the guy's like, "All right, we're jumping in the count of 3," and there's 3 jokes right there, right? Like where he goes 1, and I say something, I'm not ready to go, or whatever. 2, 3, and my first instinct is suck my dick, fuck you, kiss my ass, eat my ass, like dirty, funny laughs,
right?
And then then when I get ready for a special, I go okay. Because I've been sitting in a guy's lap, and he's like, "What are you so afraid of?" And I was like, "I don't know. You'll get hard. I'll get hard. We'll both get hard. That's how we'll die. And if they find us in the woods, you on top of me, both of us hard." And so then he goes, "Get to the door," and he goes, "All right, we're gonna jump in 1." I go, "My dick's not hard yet." so it's like I gotta do the Band-Aid writing first, and then do the what's the area where you're like, I've covered that enough. Am I going to go back there again? Because I feel like sometimes I have bits where I go, another one of those, huh, Bert? Like,
yeah, when I feel like I'm starting to get defined a certain way, I write away from that because I don't ever want to become a caricature of myself. You know what I mean? You don't want to be like, oh, you're the guy that does this.
Yeah.
And for a while, you know, I had the feeling stupid fantasies. You know, you two take luck. And which is true, you know, me feeling awkward in life and doing and feeling
you two take luck.
Yeah. But then people would start saying, "Oh, you're the guy that always feels stupid."
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, that's it. I ain't writing none of those for a while. And I immediately started writing anger fantasies, you know, about wanting to get back at people who are messing up in life and poking a stick at them. And I'm like, I need to be double barrel. I can't be a one-trick pony. You know? I don't want to be just a goof who feels uncomfortable. I need to balance this out. So I'm also a guy that will take a step in life and will take a stand in life, and I want that to be reflected through my comedy.
I had gone through what I think it was my autobiographical stage. I talked about how when I was a Catholic, when I was a kid, when I was a neighborhood kid, when I was in school, when I was a classroom clown, I talked about my faith, all that stuff. So I had done an autobiographical period, and then I started to get into what they call observational comedy, trivia. Did you ever notice that the second toe sometimes is longer than the first toe, and or you know that stuff like you ever take the stuff out of in between your toes and put it in a ball and throw it, and these things that have no import at all, but they're universal. See, the comedian thrives on not having to explain the frame of reference to an audience. All you have to do is say, detention. I was sent to detention, and everybody knows what that means. You don't have to go, you can say one word and they're in the world with you. So you look for those universal things if you can find them. And that's what those things served for me.
Well, let me tell you, the X factor is, in my view, the X factor would be your pizzazz, your charisma. What else did you bring to this event? Did you have a takeaway? Is there something memorable about you? When I walk away, are you retained in my brain because you did something unique and original? Did you do an impression of a voice that stuck into my brain? Did you have a unique point of view on something? Did you shatter the status quo and say the truth? We're like, holy shit, I never thought about that before. Was it profound? Did you bring some profundity to the show? Do you know what I'm saying? What is the X factor? What was different? What was unique? What is the takeaway? What is memorable about you? This is not only important in competitions. This is important in your regular performance. What sets you apart from all the other comics out there? What's unique? And I'm not talking about the bling or the wearing a sideways hat or something like that. That's nothing. That's just, that doesn't, add any value to, it may say something about your persona, but it doesn't add value to what you're presenting. If that's your persona, as part of your persona, the hat, the bling, that's fine. But what are you bringing up? What's the substance underneath your act? Do you have jokes? Are you landing those jokes every 18 to 20 seconds minimum when you're performing? Are you making us laugh? Do you have that pizzazz? Do you have structure in your act? Do you keep this audience rolling. In that time you're up there doing your competition, do you think they're going to leave going, wow, man, my face hurts, my side hurts? You know, that's what's going to make the difference. That's kind of what the X factor is are you bringing something different, some persona, some charisma, some sort of different level of, you know, what makes me think it's Sinbad. You know, the comedian Sinbad? Sinbad has this charisma, this smile and this charisma. It's this kind of thing that makes you just really like the dude, you know? So that's one thing. What is unique? Lisa Lampanelli brings a very strong point of view, and she's very blue. That's unique to her character. You know, Larry the Cable Guy has something unique in that he's got a very strong persona or character. And he identifies with that element of the audience, that blue-collar, hard-working, middle America element that likes that kind of the simplicity in life and just kind of just looking at it through his simple eyes. And that's his character, man. And people really identify with that. Bill Burr has that kind of real strong emotional point of view, and he's constantly the devil's advocate, taking on the status quo and trying to shatter it. And still trying to figure it all out at the same time. So he's not coming at it like, I know everything. He's coming at it like, I'm confused. Somebody explain why this makes sense. And so he has that sharp, edgy attitude. So what are you bringing that's unique? That's your X factor.
Like, it was really, for a guy who's done as long as I have in many specials, I think we're still, like you said, we're still the fucking same guy that went up that first night scared out of his mind. I don't think you were scared out of your mind. I sense that you were like, I'm doing this. I'm just going to do 20 minutes.
I was terrified. I went and got a beer. I've said this now 100 times, but I went and grabbed a beer, and a guy that Christian Harloff, who works at the store, who hangs out at the store, happened to be doing a show with me on that night. He's still doing comedy. I'm still doing comedy. And he just happened to say, hey, man, if I were you, I wouldn't do that. And I was like, what? He goes, that could turn into a really bad habit. You'll need it to get on stage. And I literally put the beer down and I said, all right, I'm going to do this sober. And I was like, I remember thinking, how do I start them laughing? If I can start them laughing, right, I can keep them laughing. Right. But I don't know how to start them laughing. And I mean, I think that was my problem for a very long time in comedy, was like, how do I get the ball rolling? Right. And it's, you know, it's, I look back and I go, I can't believe I'm the same person that did that. I have a hard time calling in sets in the city for the same reason you do, because I go, I'm home, man. I don't want to fucking deal with bombing at home. And because if I bomb in Edmonton, I get another show that night to fucking rectify things. Right. When I bomb here at the store, I bombed at the store in between Bill Burr and Joe Rogan. And I was like, Burr goes up and he's just fucking lights room on fire. And I really get put in my place of where my act is. Right. Like, and I was like, holy shit. And then I was like, well, you know what? In my head, I'm like, you know, Burr just took the energy out of the room. Joe just goes on and fucking destroys even harder. And I went, no. It's not them. It's me. Yeah. And I was like, I need to be writing. I need to be working. I need to be doing stuff in the city and challenging myself and making myself uncomfortable. You know? Well,
my wife said that to me. She's a comic too. She said, you need to start doing this. And I'm like, I just did 7 shows. You know, we're doing theaters. We started our own a live performing company, this promotion company. We're promoting our own theaters now, and it's working. And I'm like, when I'm home, you know, I rent a sound stage that we're starting. We're doing pre-production on a movie right now that we're going to start in February. And I'm like, you know, I don't, it's not even that I'm afraid of it. I just don't, look, I write a 90-minute show. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. Yes. It starts out, I was born with a defect because I was born a child, and it ends with this story about my daughter getting the cops called on me. And it goes through why you shouldn't have a kid, and it's got a theme. And I go, why would I take 7 minutes out of that and put it up at the Improv in front of behind some guy who just fucking made fun of an Adele song, and another guy who fucking talked about his left testicle, and you know. But then again, I also don't feel like I'm one of the alternative guys either. I can't really go to Largo or Luna Park.
I think you could. I think you could, and I deal with the same fucking problem. Is that I go, and it's just by design of how my money is earned. I'm a long form storyteller. It's where I found most success in my career, is with longer crazy stories.
I would defend to the death his right to do everything he does. The thing that I find unusual, and it's not a criticism so much, but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power, people who abuse their power. Women and gays and immigrants are kind of, to my way of thinking, underdogs. And, he ought to be careful because he's Jewish. And a lot of the people who want to pick on these kind of groups, the Jews are on that list a little further. You got women, gays, gypsies, blah, 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 and then suddenly you find Jews. And Andrew,
suddenly Andrew's arrested.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously he should do what he wants. And
why does he get away with it, do you think, then?
Well,
we have never laughed at jokes about the
Well,
poor.
he's appealing. I think he's appealing largely. I think his core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups. I think a lot of these guys aren't sure of their manhood because that's a problem when you're going in through adolescence. You know, could I be? I hope I'm not one of them. And the women who assert themselves and are competent are a threat to these men, and so are immigrants in terms of jobs and the
so that's why we as an audience then will laugh.
You say we. I don't think you're.
No.
But I think you're
collective we.
I think that's what is at the core of that experience that takes place in these arenas. Is a certain, a sharing of anger and rage at these targets. And I'm sure Andrew isn't that angry at them. I'm sure he's playing it as a comic.
All right, so here's what happened with Titus, and this is what I learned in the forum. Stand for something. Fucking stand for something. You know, it made me change. Like Norman Rockwell was written with this idea. God, this is going to sound so pretentious, but because the show's funny, but I have to go from a place of where am I going with it? I had that fucked up life. My mom was mentally ill, and I said, how do I make all this? I don't want to just make fun of my mom and my dad, you know, because I have a different opinion of it now because of forum. Like they gave me life, no matter how fucked up they were. I'm not here without them. I owe them everything. Even no matter how fucked up they were, I owe them my life, my existence.
Yeah.
So there's nothing they could have do to fuck that up unless they kill me. And then it's over anyway. So I kind of approached it from that. But Norman Rockwell was designed to cause a paradigm shift in the way people see their screwed up lives. Because dysfunctional used to be a bad word. It was almost like a mental illness. Oh, you're dysfunctional. Oh, we feel sorry for you. Yeah. I wanted to flip that. Fuck you. I can handle way more shit than you can. I've been through so much shit. My mom shot and killed a guy. I'm in. What do you want to do? What are you going to do? Are you gonna upset me? So and then the second one was to make people not be afraid after 9/11. I said I want everyone to get to this place where it's no point in being afraid. The third one was love is evil, to make sure that people had to people know that no matter how bad their relationship was, that new love is possible. The fourth one was Neverlution, because Neverlution was because we're this country. We're like, fuck, we got to change this country, and then I'm gonna go watch the Real Housewives of Orange County. It's called Never. We weren't gonna talk about it. We're never gonna do it. So I kind of wanted to call people to arms about really changing the country. That was after the fucking crash, and then voice in my head was to know that no matter how bad you fucked up in life, you're not a loser. You can still do it. Because it's all my fuck ups in life. It's my worst mistakes, including losing the TV show. And then the last one, it was Angry Pursuit of Happiness. I realized that I was getting happy. And I had married this great girl, and I was like, oh shit, I had this horrible fear that my career's over.
Yeah.
Life is getting good. Oh no. And I panicked. And so I wrote this thing called Angry Pursuit of Happiness, which was about, I got that life is going to end, for fucking going to end. Don't fuck around. Don't fuck around anymore. You should never have a conversation with yourself about what should I do. You know what you want to do. Listen, Bert, you know damn well that you want to do what you want to do. When you have writers come in and on your special, you have this thing in your head. You see it. I know you see it. You've done it 3 times now.
Yeah.
They bring in a team of writers who they go, that's a good idea. And then they go write what they want to do in the framework of your idea.
Do.
Right. What they want to do.
We did it.
Here's another thing. It sounds kind of dumb, but do you even know what you're saying? Do you have your facts straight? And this is a key point. You got to make sure you have the facts. If you're just coming up with stuff that's some bizarre conspiracy theory or something that's not based on anything except your emotions, and it has no basis in realness or authenticity, then the audience isn't going to buy it. A lot of people get up there, say something, makes no sense at all, and we're like, we're supposed to believe that? Doesn't make any sense, you know? His facts were wrong, and he went on for 20 minutes on this whole bit of incorrect facts. So you can't do that. You got to know what you're talking about, and you've got to have the facts behind it. So that's what I would suggest in order for you to do that. So get your facts straight. I hope this helped.
It sort of taught me that being honest is what counts. Trying to make the ordinary extraordinary is so much better than starting with the extraordinary, because it doesn't really connect. You watch those sort of shows and it washes over you, don't think about it the next day. Whereas if something is real for one person, it's touched their life, And I think as a creator and a director, it's your job to make an audience as excited and fascinated about a subject as you are. And real life does that.
So those are the jokes I had done.
Yeah.
That's good. That's solid.
I go to
That's what
San
I do
Antonio.
now.
I do my stand-up.
Especially for, like, by the way, a third or fourth time.
Time, right?
Crazy, yeah.
So I go. I win because the bar was packed full of my friends.
Yeah.
Sam Kinnison's coming to town. His opener, Carl LeBeau. You know Carl?
Yes.
Okay. So Carl's dad at the time, and I hope I'm not messing this up, but I think that's his dad had died of AIDS. I think is what he had died. His dad, but he died of something on the way to San Antonio. They need a new opener for Sam Kinison. So they go, "Hey, who won that comedy competition?"
Oh my God, dude.
And so I get a phone call in my dorm room.
Oh, my life.
Hey, do you want to open for Sam Kinison? And I believe the name of the club in San Antonio was Sneakers.
And wait, to be clear, at this time, is he a huge megastar at this time?
Huge megastar.
Okay. So it's not like, oh, that's a kind of, he's working.
No, he's Sam Kinison.
Right, okay.
He's Sam Kinison, and he's Sam Kinison to the point where...
But it is true.
100% true.
Yeah.
Tony Woods was there. Yeah. By the way, I actually, because I started going, when you tell a story and you're like, and then you do embellish because you're a comic, but then I was like, I didn't make that up. Like,
you don't remember anymore. Like,
yeah, it was 18 years ago. And so I pulled Tony aside. I go, I'm going to tell you a story, and just tell me if you remember anything.
Then that's when it started working, because one day they was trying to write a bit about Andy Richter, the co-host, going to having a Oktoberfest, which is a German drinking day, because he's a German, and I didn't know what it was. And they told me, and I was like, everybody got a drinking day. And they was like, what? I was like, they got Cinco de Mayo, St. Patrick's Day, Oktoberfest. When black people gonna have a drinking day? And they was like, man, you should write that up. And I went and wrote it, and then they was like, you're gonna perform it on the show. They was like, we're gonna open the curtains, Conan's gonna call you out, you're gonna go out, and you're gonna talk about that right there on the show. Never been done before. I'm like, okay, I did it. That's when I found kind of like my voice. I was like, okay. And then we started doing other bits and started doing that, and then it just started clicking. And next thing I know, man, we rolling. I mean, I'm rolling. Like, never been in this position ever in my life. It was phenomenal. Yeah, so I did feel the pressure, but it once I became myself, then that's when it started working. And I think other people need to realize that. I go with everybody. You have to know there is no one like you. And people forget that because they so busy trying to do what they think is expected instead of just, you got to give yourself. It's no one like you. It's no one like nobody. And that's the beauty that we need to embrace about ourselves.
Christine, P, is that short for Polak? What is that? Saragusa. I loved you when you played for the Ravens.
Thank you.
Can.
But I grew up doing an impression of my dad was how that was how I won over my siblings. Like, what was, like, when you started doing, like, being funny as a kid, what did you do? Did you do imitations of your parents?
Definitely.
Yeah, and teachers and stuff.
And I think now too, I think some of the biggest reactions I get right now on stage is like making fun of my parents.
Yeah.
Right?
So universal.
Yeah.
And then
you opened for Kenny Loggins?
Yeah, I did the whole tour, and that but I was, look, man, at the beginning, you're just trying to be funny. You don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to get it out. And I was talking about inane bullshit. And I had a few jokes. You can't stop being who you are. There'll be some pieces at the beginning, if you're a new comic, that you write that are going to be who you end up. I was writing some stuff about my parents' divorce and stuff, but it was all surface level stuff. And then I was 12 years in, I was going to quit. I was like, I fucking hate this. You ever be on stage, you do a bit too long?
Oh, God.
And especially, and you can, and as you're getting to that bit in your act, you see it coming in your head, and you're starting to despise yourself and everything you've done as that bit gets in front of your brain, and then you still say it like a whore.
Yeah, believe me, but this Clinton did an inhale joke. I'm about ready to dump it.
yeah, my Nixon stuff, I just cut it. So, and I got this place where I call it growing a tumor on my soul. I was going to quit. I was going to quit comedy. I was going to open a body shop. I'm a good car guy, and I was going to open a body shop. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is all I'm going to do. And I took a thing called the Landmark Forum, and I really got that with the skills I had, I could probably do anything I wanted. And so then I wrote Norman Rockwell's Bleeding, which actually lost me some gigs. Norman Rockwell was so angry when I wrote it about my mom's suicide and my dad's divorce and all this stuff. When I wrote that in '95, that I had some clubs that were like, "We want Happy Titus back." And I'm like, well, Happy Titus was never existed. Number one, Happy Titus was bullshit, and he's never coming back. And to some of these clubs' credits, years later after I got my TV show and went back, they said to me, "Wow, we made a mistake."
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
They didn't know what you were doing at the time, and it's easier to once people know you and they kind of know like this is. He talks about his life, and some it's great, and some it's really depressing. But I was amazed by how you took something at that point. It was your mother's suicide. I'm like, he put this in his act, but he made it work. Like, I was fascinated by the ability to take something so miserable and actually fit it into a comedy routine, but it didn't feel out of place. It felt like it belonged there.
Again, you got to find punchlines, man. You got to find punchlines, and I think. The saddest thing, whenever I see a comic take a one-man show, like there was that big one-man show chapter in comedy too, where everyone was like, you remember this?
Yes.
Where everybody like they're comics, and then I'm doing a one-man show, and what happened was they would just, basically they thought that meant was cut all the jokes out, and talk about being locked in a closet by their father when they were 6, and with no jokes, and I always would say, man, I go, you have to be just as funny. You can just be more serious. You can actually take it to a darker place. But you have to have punchlines, for God's sakes.
You can meander a bit, but you better get to something funny. It lets people off the hook, like, all right, this is what we're here for. We don't want to just sit there and...
That's a sin, man. You keep taking audience to a dark... Like, if I did that story, and I did it today with my sister, the killing herself story. I tried to tell the story about the guy, but you can't leave an audience. It's not my job to leave them into the tumor building area.
Right.
I don't want you being so stressed that your cancer cells are forming in you. I want to get you to laugh so we can create the endorphins to kill that.
And that's what we've been talking about with the politics, that, like, even some of the stuff SNL is doing and stuff, they eliminate jokes from it.
Yeah.
And it becomes like, no, seriously, we're morally in trouble as a country, and we all have to. And you're supposed to be the escape. Like, you're supposed to be.
This thing specifically pissed me off because, like, half of us wanted this, like, this pantsuit, arrogant pantsuit wearing robot. I call her She-3PO, and half of us wanted this bright orange delusional fucking rodeo clown. And that's what we were fighting about. And these people don't give a shit about us either way. And families were breaking up over Thanksgiving. They were like, Uncle Phil can suck it. I hope he dies in a gas fire. Like, Uncle Phil gave you a kidney, bro.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? Screw him. He can have it back. I want a box cutter and Suburban. Get it right now. And people got crazy. And that's kind of what I'm talking about now. It's like, do you guys realize that they don't give a shit about us? They made everybody believe it was us and them. And, Democrats, Republicans, and it's really... It's we. If we get together, they're fucked. And that's why they just keep it separated. So I think that's kind of the point of the show, and I'm approaching it from that angle. The problem is we all pick sides. They made us all pick sides. Every liberal, if you say do an impression of a conservative, they'll be like, "Well, I went down, I bought me another gun at the Walmarts. Then I went down and I shot an endangered species. Then on my way to a concert at Ted Nugent's house during a KKK rally."
Right.
And then in the same thing with conservatives, talk about liberal. Well, I'm just going to go eat some kale salad at the butt of my boyfriend. It's like we
actually sounds fairly delicious.
Doesn't it?
Writing and believing in what you write in. Simple as that. And don't let nobody tell you different.
What I do is I read USA Today every morning. I pick like really good topics and I just bring them to the stage. This morning there was an article about drive-by shooting, and I thought, how do you put a funny spin on that? And I thought, you know what, babies are noisy. What if we did drive-by shootings and eliminated babies? And that's funny right there.
If everybody else think it's horrible and you think it's right, find a way to display the way you see it.
So I was doing a Chinese restaurant called the Kowloon in Boston, in Saugus, Massachusetts, and I was sitting in my car after the show, just feeling like this was all a big mistake. I'm not good enough, and I felt like my jokes were a trap. And I listened to a CD of George talking about comedy and the workshopping it and talking about it seriously. And the thing that blew me away about this fellow was that he just kept putting out specials. Every year there'd be a new George Carlin special, a new George Carlin album. They just kept coming, and each one was deeper than the next. And I just thought, how can he do that? And it made me literally cry that I could never do that. I was telling the same jokes for 15 years. So I'm listening, and they ask him, how do you do all this material? And I'm like, and I hear him, and he says, well, I just decided every year I'd be working on that year's special. And I'd do the special, and then I'd just chuck out the material. And I'd start again with nothing. And I thought, that's crazy. How do you throw away? It took me 15 years to build this hour. If I throw it away, I got nothing. But he gave me the courage to try, and also I was desperate. What the fuck else was I going to do? This idea that you throw everything away and you start over again. And I thought, well, okay, when you're done telling jokes about airplanes and dogs, and you throw those away, what do you got left? You can only dig deeper. Start talking about your feelings and who you are. And then you do those jokes and they're gone. You got to dig deeper. So then you start thinking about your fears and your nightmares and doing jokes about that. And then they're gone. And then you start going into just weird yeah, eventually you get to your balls. But there's a whole... It's a process that I watched him do my whole life, and I started to try to do it. And I started to think, because he says whatever he wants. What do I really want to say that I'm afraid to say? And at the time I was a father. I am still a father. But at the time, I had started, I didn't take off yet. The jury's out. My oldest is 8. I could still split. So far, I'm still there. I was having a lot of hard time being a father. And I wanted to say it on stage. And one night I thought, okay, forget all the old jokes. I'm going to start again. And I thought of the first thing. I said, I can't have sex with my wife, because we have a baby, and our baby's a It's just what I was feeling, and I said it. And the audience went, whoa! And I thought, oh, I'm somewhere new now. And I said something like, I never used to get babies in the garbage, but now I understand it. And they did that. And I thought, I'd rather have that than the tepid laughter for my 15-year-old jokes.
Well, what about your material, man? You're feeling good about that?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I love that. I love being able to say anything I want. Mm-hmm. I had to learn to stop caring about people not laughing. Because the idea of comedy, really, is not everybody should be laughing. Right. It should be about 50 people laughing and 50 people horrified. Right. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be people that get it and people that don't get it. People, for some reason, the people who don't get it have a lot more energy to say you suck harder than the people who love you.
And we only hear the one person that looks at us with hatred.
But they usually also get up in the middle of your show and say, fuck you, and walk out.
You've been described as, I quote, an NPR said this, the dark prince of comedy. Jeselnik takes pride in joking about the topics you shouldn't joke about. Is everything on the table?
Everything is on the table. And in fact, if I thought of a joke, if I thought of a topic that, like, this is too much, this is too dark, this is too upsetting, then I would make it my, life's mission to find a joke about it. I would say if you think there's something that shouldn't be joked about, I've got at least 2 jokes about that. But my goal is to make you laugh at it. I'm trying to do a good thing. I don't want to upset anyone. I do. But because you can't, if you're performing for 100 people, someone's going to be upset. But I'm trying to make someone laugh.
Isn't there something about time limit? You can kid now about Lincoln going to the theater.
Sure.
I doubt you could have done it in 1865.
I would have been the first one. I would have been, because there's a tension there. If you can do it the day of, if you can make someone laugh the day of at a tragedy, it's the most amazing laugh.
You can't make a laugh out of 9/11.
It is almost impossible.
9/11, impossible.
9/11,
impossible.
Louis had a joke maybe a week after 9/11. That's one of the greatest jokes.
What was his 9/11 joke?
He said, you can tell how bad a person you are, how good a person you are, by how long you waited after 9/11 to masturbate for the first time. And for him, it was in between the first and second tower. And I just thought, oh
okay,
my,
that's
funny, and it's not even really talking about 9/11. It's a way. There are ways to do it, but it's very difficult. And if you miss, you are going to hear about it. You're going to get in trouble. Yeah.
Agreed. Are we too politically correct?
I don't think so. I know this is unpopular for comedians to say, but I think that political correctness in this country has gotten more and more powerful over the past couple of decades. But a lot of great things have come out of it. You know, you look at gay rights, you look at transgender acceptance, a furthering of racial equality. These are all things that came from PC, and it makes my job harder. But I don't want my job to be easy. As a comic, I want it to be difficult. I want the obstacle course to be master level. You know, so and that makes it tough.
But the relief of comedy is it takes things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour, and then we have the rest of the day to look at them like they're as horrible and sad as they really are.
So, what do you think the audience gets out of having a structure where it starts where you're kind of pushing them a little bit first and then explaining the context that way?
Well, I used to do it to get people to listen, because I'd be doing these awful gigs. I'd be in like bars and no one would be listening. So you just start saying something that sounds like, oh my God, is this guy going to say something homophobic? Is this going to be racist? Is he pro-Hitler? Like these are things that get people to put their drink down and be like, you know, what's going on up there? And you just keep doing it to them. You just keep pulling the football away and they go flying, but they start paying attention. Then they get into your rhythm and then you could actually do your act. It was, you know, there's all these techniques when you're starting out and people don't know who you are to try to get a crowd to listen to you as you get put into like one impossible situation.
I also don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So when I'm looking at a celebrity, I'm making a joke about them. I want them to laugh, and I feel kind of weird if they're upset about that.
Is it a thin line, the mean and funny? Or is that
very thin?
Rickles has been. I've known Rickles for 50, 60 years.
Yeah,
no kidding. I've known him for 55 years. Rickles is always wanting your love.
Yes.
So he never curses. He borderlines it, right? But I never saw anyone get mad at him.
To be honest with you, who really gets offended by comedians? Who is walking around? Like, when was the last time you told somebody you're a comedian and be like, oh, you guys are so offensive? They always think it's cool, generally speaking. Right. And there's this small group of fucking people. And what I love, too, is they only get offended by shit that has to do with them. Right. I had a show recently, right? And I was standing on stage. It was a casino, and dude, these fucking people were hammered. Hammered. And there was this guy yelling at me the whole fucking show, screaming and yelling. Not bad shit, but just yelling. I kept telling him to shut up. He wouldn't shut the fuck up. I was on stage for 90 fucking minutes. I finally I just snapped. I was like, dude, are you fucking retarded? Shut up. All right? Jesus fucking Christ, right? End of the show. Who comes up to me? Two fucking people who have a special needs kid, and they go, we came to see you because you said that you don't do jokes about special needs kids, which I don't. Right. And it's like, I didn't fucking do a bit on a special needs person, okay?
But they came up to
and I used that
the
fucking
word retarded.
Dude, they fucking crumpled up the brochure with my face, gave me the tickets back, did the whole fucking thing. And this is what kills me. Right. This is what kills me. If I had used the word faggot when I talked to him, those two people would not have been offended and would not have come up to me. And that's why it's bullshit. Exactly. It's like, I was on stage, I fucking made fun of plane crashes. I talked about sinking cruise ships. I made fun of Bruce Jenner. And if you wanted to be a douche about it, you would say, oh, he's making fun of all transgender people, right? Right. And I wasn't even doing that. But all of that was fine. Right. All of that was funny. Right. An hour and 28 minutes into the hour and 30 minute set, I finally fucking snapped. What I'm guilty of is losing my temper and using a hurtful word. I didn't do a fucking bit about that. Yeah. Do you think I would really like deliberately go there and try and hurt you and bring up that level of pain? Yeah. I would never do that. Right. But I am a human being. And these two people who came up to me, it's like, dude, you're telling me you never snapped and you never you never said something that you didn't fucking mean. That's what losing your temper is. Right. And I just want to be like, you know what, dude? You go on stage for fucking 90 minutes and deal with these fucking animals. Right. You do that. You do that. And when you snap, I want to hear I want to see the flowers coming out of your fucking mouth. You know what I mean?
she was like blaming him for coming out of the closet, that, you know, oh, you choose to do this abomination sort of thing, you know, that kind of person. And she goes, well, the bad news is my mother is dead. The good news is there's one less person in the world that calls me a fucking faggot. So a great joke from his point of view. And it's about his personal tragedy. And he says something that could be hypersensitive. I mean, people might be coming down on me for just saying fucking faggot. It wasn't me saying it. I was doing it as him saying it. So, but again, they will leap and call me wrong for saying that. But it's just the words. It's not the words. It's the heart behind the words. And since it's his personal tragedy, he can say that. But you'll notice whether it's news people, blog people, whatever, they're treading lightly. They're walking on eggshells not to offend. And it does have an impact on your career, I hate to say.
Patrice, the best advice he ever gave me, and what my first thought of him is, I was at Nick's Comedy Stop. It was 1991, and we were still just getting to know each other. I remember I was sitting with him. He had his Discman on, and I was, trying to get to know him a little bit. And I, tapped him. I was like, "What are you listening to?" And he's like, he was listening to like a bootleg version of Notorious B.I.G. And he played me that before, anybody had even heard of this guy. And he was still Bruiser. We were calling him Bruiser. It was before he was Patrice.
Bruiser.
Yeah, he was Bruiser for the first few years back in Boston. But I remember that night having our first heart-to-heart, and he said to me, he said, man, you can't fuck with the truth. Be the truth, always. Wow. And everything will roll off.
Stand-ups are the person in the room. We almost get up and articulate what maybe the room is thinking or hoping, or an idea that they hadn't thought of. It's like we're very real. We have to be very rooted, which is the trouble if you get successful, because you suddenly lose a connection with people.
In this 2016 appearance, Conan pointed out one of the most important elements of Bill Burr's comedy, his perspective. Burr's anecdotal comedy is in many ways Socratic. Socrates was well known for playing the role of the ignorant teacher to help others come up with their own answers and opinions. If you pay attention to Burr while he tells his stories and explains his thoughts, you'll notice he never claims to be a reputable authority on anything he's skeptical of. But he always manages to offer an enlightening perspective that wittingly questions cultural narratives. In this bit on Jimmy Fallon, Burr rants about something from the perspective of ignorance on something especially important to appreciating his craft: comedic intent and comedic integrity.
It's like watching a comedian apologize to a blogger. It's like, why would you do that? Yeah, it's one person in the crowd who sat up late night with their feelings hurt, right? Yeah. Some melted butterfingers on their chest as they're sitting there typing away.
Eating Butterfingers.
They act like they won a Peabody Award and they write for the Times. It's like this one guy in the crowd.
Yeah, no, you can't cater to that stuff.
You can't. No. You can't veer from what you do. Look at AC/DC. They made the same song. Okay, they sing about their balls, the devil, and women. That's it.
Whether it's in his stand-up, talk show appearances, or podcasts, Bill Burr continues to provide important content that breaks down social ideologies and cultural narratives. It goes without saying that in a divided nation, nothing's more important than questioning everything.
So when he finally ends the story by saying,
"It has a happy ending, though. He later died at the hospital." That's right.
The audience truly believes it. It's a horrible, even macabre way of looking at the whole situation, because Bill has painted such a detailed description of this man's suffering that you end up thinking, yeah, I'm glad he's dead. Which is such a horrible thought to have, making it all the more hysterical. Bill Burr to me is one of many examples of what comedians are there to do for society. To get us not only to laugh at the absurdities of everyday life, but to change our perspective on situations we may have written off with simple labels. Instead of seeing a terminally ill man's suicide attempt as tragic, he framed it as a last-ditch effort of individualism. While his specials all have a wide range of examples to choose from, the helicopter story, to me, is his finest work to date. When you go to one of his shows, you know exactly what you're getting into. Whether you find him funny or annoying, one thing's for sure: he's just telling you as it is.
And I think that a comedian's job isn't just to make people laugh. That's easy. That can be a reflex. I mean, you see some comedians that it's the rhythm. They can even throw in a fake punchline. They'd get a laugh. I think it's about making people think about it and why it's funny. And I think comedy is about empathy. I think, I can't laugh at people I don't like. I think you should never be above the audience. There's nothing remotely funny about seeing unfeasibly handsome, brilliant people come out and tell you why they're brilliant. I want to see a putz losing his way, falling over, and getting back up and dusting himself off. And you've always got to see that humanity, that sort of struggle in anything, really.
Mad Max Thunderdome. This guy is like, they're coming from Guatemala, they're coming from Mexico, there's a liberal mob that's coming, Muslims, and you would think everybody in the country is just like, to the bunker, to the ramparts.
To that point, it's been written about you, Dave, that...
It has been written.
It has been said that you have a singular gift for blurring left and right, red and blue states. What do you think that means? That somehow you're able to sort of surf, bring them together, not necessarily get stuck in the political divide?
Because most of political discussion is so binary, and I'm way more interesting than that. It's just a dude.
So you're way more interesting than that?
Yeah, most people are. If you talk to them, you know, I hear people say, you know, families are not speaking to one another because of politics. That sounds insane to me. Like, there's a ton of people that I love and respect that I completely disagree with.
Patrice O'Neal is known for being extremely authentic and real with his material. He was able to use POV humor in a way that allowed the audience to really identify with his point of view. If you tried to analyze Patrice O'Neal's material, it would be very difficult for you to find any kind of conventional punchlines. That's because the humor comes from both your ability to empathize with a point of view, as well as his ability to reveal some kind of hidden truth using that point of view.
So there's a way to approach this. George Carlin said, when you're taking on issues like this and you have a strong point of view, one way to get around it, take the shit that drives you crazy, make it funny, is to raise the bridge. And what he means is raise the eyebrows. If you raise your eyebrows when you're talking about certain issues, you're not judging, you're trying to figure it out, you're confused, you're alarmed, doesn't make any sense to you. It doesn't make sense. Somebody explain this to me. Which, by the way, again, I'll mention Bill Burr, because he takes on a lot of these issues, does this really well, because the whole thing is about, I don't get it, somebody explain it to me. However, there are sometimes, if you're going to take on issues, you have to be sure that it fits with your persona. Is it a part of you, or is it just coming out of left field because suddenly you want to just make a statement on stage? You know, if you're doing jokes and all of a sudden you want to make a statement, it just sounds like you're having a rant fest and you're not really doing stuff that's consistent with your character or your stage persona, if you will. You got to ask yourself if it fits and have some discipline enough to decide whether or not you're going to keep that material in the act or whether you're going to stay with your quirky, weird stuff. Does that make sense?
Let's start with the theory. Caleb Warren and I have crafted a theory of humor that we call the benign violation theory. The benign violation theory integrates existing humor theory and builds on work by Tom Veitch to say that humor occurs when and only when three conditions are satisfied. A situation is a violation, the situation is benign, and both of those appraisals occur simultaneously. There's many ways to make a violation benign. We've studied three. One way you make a violation benign is to not be strongly committed to the violated norm. This explains why a bunch of non-religious academics may laugh about a church giving away a Hummer SUV. Another way that a violation can be benign is if it's psychologically distant, such as if it occurs to someone else, happened a long time ago, or just doesn't seem real. Yet another way that a violation can seem benign is if there's some alternative explanation that somehow makes the violation okay, as occurs in the case of play fighting and tickling. The benign violation theory predicts that primates laugh when play fighting or tickling because both are mock attacks or threatening situations that also seem harmless. The theory also explains, in addition to what is funny, explains what is not funny and distinguishes between the two meanings of the term not funny. Situations that are purely benign are not funny. There's no threat there, and explains why you can't tickle yourself. You can try it. It doesn't work. Situations that are pure violations, or what we call malign violations, are also not funny. So that creepy guy who's kind of sitting close to you, who looks pretty eager to tickle you, there's nothing okay about that situation. The theory also accounts for other types of physical humor. Walking down a flight of stairs, no violation, not funny. Falling down a flight of stairs, but being unhurt, benign violation, funny. Falling down that flight of stairs and being badly hurt, malign violation, not funny. You can see how the benign violation has great explanatory power. It explains nervous laughter, for instance, such as how tickling, you may laugh, but it's unwanted. Because a violation is a necessary condition for humor, you may experience a negative emotion in addition to your amusement. We've studied this in Hurl with benign moral violations, such as when someone's treated unfairly but probably deserves it. Let's turn our attention to how to live a more humorous life. The theory indicates that you should pay attention to your audience, and it suggests that everybody has a good sense of humor under the right circumstances. What one person sees as benign, another sees as a benign violation, and another sees as a malign violation. These folks won't laugh at your pedophile joke. Yeah, I was worried about that one. You should also consider the situation. Is the situation a violation? Then try to make it more benign. Writers, directors, and comedians have long advocated for the use of distance in doing this. Tragedy is when I cut my finger. Comedy is when you walk into an open sewer and die. Our participants endorse this idea. They say that a friend falling into an open sewer is less funny than a stranger. They also find this violation funnier when perceived from a far distance than a close distance. We call this the Silverman strategy. The comedian Sarah Silverman transforms violations into benign violations by making racial and ethnic jokes in a cute, non-serious, non-threatening way. But not all violations will be made funnier by making them more distant. Although Mark Twain said that humor is tragedy plus time, no one says humor is a mild misstep plus time. And our participants seem to indicate that bringing some mild violations closer makes them funnier. So stumbling on a curb is funnier when it happens to your friend than when it happens to a stranger. This is evidenced by the saying, "You had to be there." And moreover, our participants find this mild violation funnier when perceived up close than from a far perspective. We call this the Seinfeld strategy. Seinfeld transforms normal, everyday situations into benign violations by highlighting what is wrong with them. We finally suggest you consider yourself. Are you like Sarah Silverman? Brash, over the top? Soften the situation, soften the violations. If you're like Seinfeld, though, more reserved and mild-mannered, concentrate on creating these violations, highlighting them. So you probably by now have figured out I'm not going to ask you to touch each other. But how did I know that that proposition would be funny? Well, first, I started with a violation. It's clearly wrong to ask you to do that. It violates a host of norms. But I had to know that this was going to be benign. Well, first I considered you. I figured you're a pretty open-minded group. You're here to learn new things, experience new things. Okay. I also created distance. I told you this was going to be in the future, not in the present. And lastly, there's an alternative interpretation. I am giving a talk about humor, and so it could make sense to ask you to do this. In short, to make things funny, you want to create a benign violation. That's easier said than done, however. Irma Bombeck said that there's a thin line between laughter and pain, comedy and tragedy, and humor and hurt.
Yeah.
So socialization is big. Activity is big. I need to do things. I need to go places. I need to see things. I need to travel. I need to I do a lot of different things.
Right.
I like to try to get as much activity in as possible.
Yeah.
But physical writing to me is a must.
Yeah.
I sit down in front of my computer and I write. I write all the time. And I don't necessarily write jokes. I just write.
Right.
I write shit and then the jokes come out of that.
Right.
Premises come out of that stuff. More essays.
I love that. It's one of my favorite parts of stand-up is just being by myself and writing.
Yeah.
Just that part, that mining, you're just mining.
Exactly.
And then once in a while you get this great stuff that comes out. A lot of times nothing comes out. That's
Right.
the biggest challenge of writing is getting out of your way and not beating yourself up if everything that comes out isn't great.
Yep.
Most of it isn't great.
I think one of the biggest challenges of writing is discipline. It's one of the biggest challenges because most people just don't. If you're a writer or if you're a comic and there's no one telling you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because you have this open-ended schedule. Like you could have gone to yoga. From 9 to 10:30 and you chose to write.
Right.
You might have chosen to write because yoga's too hard. You might have decided, this fucking writing is too difficult. Or yoga's too difficult. I'm just gonna write. I mean, it could be one of either possible reasons.
Yeah. It's no, I should do both. I should.
Fuck, man.
You said, I always try with writing also to not be so rigid. Like, there was a time when I could only write on the computer in the morning up until 10. And it's like, that's stupid. Sometimes I don't have my computer. Sometimes I just have a pad and I'm in a coffee house after doing radio at 11. Yeah. So why not do that? So my thing now is I just make myself sit down for 2 hours at some point. At whatever point, it doesn't matter if it's late in the day, at night, whatever it is. That's like your workout. It's like you've got to sit. Just sit.
Do you ever write on your phone?
Yeah.
You know what's amazing about writing on the phone? If you have an iPhone, or even there's actually a lot of them now.
I use Notes.
Yeah, Notes, and then dictate it.
Oh, yeah?
Here's what I would suggest. When you write that 5 minutes, I would get up and try that 5 minutes. Make sure you audio record, have somebody video you if possible on the iPhone or something, then review that video. And keep the stuff that works, get rid of the stuff that doesn't, and keep growing that act each and every week. If you have funny material, the audience doesn't mind hearing it again. It's going to be a different audience. You'll have some of the same comedians out there, and if, in fact, the club owner is watching or the booker is watching, they'll hear the similar jokes again. But if those jokes are good, they don't mind hearing them again. Sometimes I have comics say, my friends want me to do new material before they come see me again. It's not that they want you to do new material. They want you to do material that's funny. Because think about it. When you've listened to albums or you've listened to videos or downloaded videos of your favorite comics or watched specials of your favorite comics, you don't just watch it once. You listen to it over and over again or repeatedly. You don't mind doing that if it's funny. I remember George Carlin albums. I would listen to some of those for hours, hundreds of times, because it was funny. I didn't mind hearing the material again. So don't worry about doing the same material as long as it's funny. If it's not funny, either fix the joke or lose the joke. If it is funny, leave the joke in, develop that core set. So the big question is core act versus new material. So this can go any way. It doesn't have to be one way. You don't have to listen to exactly what I say. How do you feel? When I first started, I didn't think I could step on stage without having an hour of material. That's all I knew, right? So I developed an hour of material. And I'd get up at the clubs, I'd get up at the mics, and this one club in town was doing a mic every single night from Sunday through Friday, so I'd go every single night and do different material each night. Now, that got accolades from some of the other comics, but what I realized was that the club owner wasn't able to identify me, to connect me to some sort of a brand, to connect me to a theme. He didn't know where I stood. He didn't know, what that material meant to me. He couldn't really fixate on who I was because I was doing different material every week. That's what the club owner said. Every club owner is different. There's no one way to do anything. So what I came up with is this kind of solution through my experience. These 5 elements that you should be sure are in your core act. Here they are. First of all, great jokes. Sounds kind of obvious. There's a lot of comics out there who are doing the mic scene, have been doing the mic scene for a couple of years now, doing the same shitty jokes. It doesn't make any sense. Doing the same jokes the same way. It's not going to change. If the jokes aren't funny, they're not funny. You can bang your head against the wall. You got to either change the joke to make it work or lose the joke. But they do the same thing. It doesn't make any sense. Never made any sense to me why people would do that sort of thing. But make sure you have great jokes, nice tight jokes. I like to open a set with a benign retaliation joke. This particular one works well for me when I'm on the road. I'll be like, I just got back from Denver, Colorado. I was doing a show for Wells Fargo Bank. They paid me $3,500, which is really weird because I still owe them $22,000. And it always gets a laugh from the audience. Sometimes a little, bit of an applause too, because you're taking on the behemoth corporation, Wells Fargo, and winning by, them paying you despite the fact you still owe them money. So that joke works. I sometimes will do a benign retaliation joke. I like this benign retaliation joke structure because, in my opinion, it's the perfect joke form. Because you have a protagonist and an antagonist built into the joke, and the audience, through their emotion, is rooting for someone to win, the protagonist usually. That's basic story structure, right? I always make sure there's tight jokes, especially doing a 5-minute set. It's got to be nice and tight, I like to make sure I'm prepared when I hit the stage because you never know who's going to be watching in that audience.
And I just said, here we go. And that club can really let you know where the silence is.
Yeah.
And you go, all right. And then you're like, oh, I've been lazy. I've been performing to fans who will give you the benefit of the doubt.
Who love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they want you to succeed. But when you do a Netflix special, you need it to be strangers need to like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the old Louis quote that I used to hang my hat on. They were like, why don't you work at UCB? And he goes, anyone can make them laugh. He was like, I'm famous. Like, if I go in, like, that's like making your friends laugh. This is why I do the road. The art form is to make strangers laugh.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it is to make strangers laugh.
Yeah. Well, it's also, you don't want a delusional perspective. And one thing that does happen to some like Stanhope lives by it. Like, he's like, why would I go and do someone else's audience? He goes, it took me 25 years to make my own audience. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But I really feel like to develop material, to really do it right, you got to do it in front of just regular people that aren't necessarily there to see you. And the beautiful thing about the store is if there's 15 people in the lineup or 20 people in the lineup, whatever it is, how many are there to see you? 10%? 30%?
Yeah.
20%? Like, maybe they're there to see you and Dalia and also, Tom and also Christina. Like, they're just comedy fans. They're not Bert Kreischer fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's giant. That's giant. Because those guys that like develop like that, I've seen a few people that develop an audience, and that's all their audience, and they just get real complacent, real lazy.